The arrogant millionaire called her a thief. But after one night, he refused to let her go. Part 2. Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back to Love in Chapters. If you're just joining us on this particular story, then I think you should first check out the Part 1, because trust me, you'd love it. As always, let us know in the comments section what time and part of the world you're tuning in from. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe if you haven't already, and share this video with a loved one. Thank you. Now, let's dive right in. The next morning, Lucas got the call he'd been waiting for. The police had caught the airport thief and recovered most of his belongings, including his laptop. "Everything's intact?" Lucas asked, hardly daring to hope. "Looks like it," the officer confirmed. "The thief was just a petty criminal, wasn't interested in your data. You can pick everything up at the station whenever you're ready." Lucas spent the day retrieving his things, checking his laptop thoroughly, relief flooding through him when he found all his work files untouched. Months of projects, client information, designs, all there, all safe. That night, back home and working on catching up with some emails, Lucas glanced out his window and saw Haley's light on. She was in her room, curled up on her bed, scrolling through her phone, completely unaware that he could see her. He shouldn't. He knew he shouldn't, but before he could talk himself out of it, Lucas grabbed the laser pointer he used for presentations and aimed it through her window, creating a small red dot on her wall. Haley was mindlessly scrolling through Instagram, looking at Trish's latest posts from her vacation in Hawaii, when she noticed a red dot moving across her wall. She frowned, sitting up. The dot danced around, circling, then settled on her window frame. Haley looked out her window and nearly laughed out loud. Lucas Rivera was standing at his own window, waving at her like an idiot, the laser pointer in his other hand. He started making elaborate hand gestures, sign language that looked more like someone doing an impression of an octopus having a seizure. But Haley could roughly translate. "Come downstairs. Come outside," Lucas gestured. Haley checked her phone. 11:47 p.m. She made her own hand gestures back. "It's late. Everyone's asleep." "No." Lucas's response was more emphatic, pointing and gesturing, adding what looked like pleading puppy dog eyes that she could barely see, but somehow knew were happening. Haley shook her head firmly, then closed her curtains and lay back down on her bed, smiling despite herself at his ridiculousness. Not up to 5 minutes later, Haley was just starting to drift off when she heard it. A small thud against her window. Then another. Then another. "You've got to be kidding me," Haley muttered, throwing off her covers and stomping to the window. She yanked open the curtain and started to unlatch the window to yell at Lucas about being a mature adult who respects reasonable bedtimes. The window swung open just as Lucas released another snowball. It hit her square in the face. Oh my God! Below, in the small space between their houses, Lucas was standing in the snow, his hand over his mouth, his shoulders shaking with laughter, even as he was making exaggerated, apologetic gestures. Haley wiped snow off her face, glaring down at him. "Lucas Rivera, you are a dead man." But she was already grabbing her coat. 2 minutes later, Haley emerged from her back door into the snow-covered yard, immediately scooping up a handful of snow and packing it into a ball with practiced efficiency. Lucas saw her coming and started backing up, hands raised in surrender. Wait, I didn't mean to hit you in the face. That was an accident." "Sure it was." Haley wound up and threw. Lucas dodged, the snowball sailing past his head. "You have terrible aim. I was going easy on you." Haley scooped up more snow, packing it tighter this time. "Haley, let's talk about this like adults." The snowball hit him in the chest, exploding in a spray of white. "Oh, it's on now." Lucas said, grinning, and bent to grab his own ammunition. What followed was the most ridiculous, joyful snowball fight two adults had any business engaging in. They dodged behind trees, used garbage cans as shields, slipped and slid across the snow-covered grass. They were trying to be quiet, both acutely aware that their families were sleeping, but kept dissolving into laughter that they had to muffle with their hands. Haley was surprisingly good, her throws accurate and powerful. Lucas was faster, dodging most of her attacks and retaliating with rapid-fire throws that kept her on the defensive. "Where did you learn to throw like that?" Lucas called out from behind a tree. "I have a nephew. We have snowball fights all winter. Where did you learn to dodge like that?" "Self-preservation. My cousins used to gang up on me every Christmas." A snowball hit the tree next to Lucas's head, and he yelped, scrambling to a new position. Haley was laughing so hard she could barely make new snowballs. Finally, after what must have been 20 minutes of all-out winter warfare, they called a truce, both of them breathless and covered in snow, sitting on the cold ground between their houses. "This is insane," Haley said, still catching her breath. "We're adults. We have jobs, responsibilities. We're having a snowball fight at midnight on December 26th. Lucas agreed. "We're basically children." "I regret nothing." "Me neither." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the night quiet around them, except for their breathing and the occasional sound of snow falling from tree branches. "I got my laptop back today," Lucas said finally. "Police caught the thief. Everything was intact." "That's great. You must be relieved." "Yeah, it was. It was a good reminder that sometimes things work out, you know?" Haley glanced at him, and in the moonlight, reflecting off the snow, his profile was striking. The strong line of his jaw, the way his hair fell across his forehead, slightly messy from their snowball fight. "Tell me about your job," Haley said suddenly. "Like, actually tell me, not just the surface stuff." Lucas turned to look at her, surprised but pleased. "Yeah? Yeah." So Lucas told her about how his father had been an architect, how some of Lucas's earliest memories were of playing with his dad's drafting tools, building block towers that his father would admire like they were actual buildings. How when his father died, Lucas had held onto those memories, that love of construction and design. Real estate felt like a way to honor that, Lucas said, his voice soft. Creating spaces, developing properties, making places where people can live and work and build their own memories. It's not quite architecture, but it's close. "That's beautiful," Haley said, and she meant it. "What about you? Art and fashion?" Haley smiled, pulling her knees up to her chest. I've always seen the world in colors and textures. Even as a kid, I couldn't just see a tree. I saw 100 shades of green and brown, the way the light hit the leaves, the patterns in the bark. Art was the only way I could express that. And fashion was an extension of that. Why should art just hang on walls? Why can't people wear it, live in it? "You have such passion when you talk about it," Lucas said, and there was something in his voice that made Haley's heart skip. "It's incredible to watch." They talked about family then. Lucas opened up about how it had always been him and his mother, the two of them against the world, how he'd worked so hard to be successful, partly to make her proud, partly to give her the life she deserved after sacrificing so much for him. "When I got her this house and she told me Mirabelle lived next door, her friend from high school, I was so relieved," Lucas admitted. "I hate that she's alone so much. But knowing she has someone to talk to have coffee with, to just exist with, it makes me feel less guilty about not visiting more." "My mom is chaos incarnate," Haley said warmly, "but she's never boring. Hilda probably hasn't had a quiet moment since they reconnected. Probably not." It was getting colder, and they both knew they should head inside, but neither of them wanted to move. Finally, Lucas stood, brushing snow off his jeans, and extended a hand to Haley. She took it, letting him pull her to her feet, and they stood there for a moment, hands still clasped, breath visible in the cold air. "Hey," Lucas said, his voice suddenly nervous in a way she'd never heard before. "I was thinking, would you want to hang out sometime? Like, officially?" Haley's heart did a complicated acrobatic routine. "Are you asking me on a date, Rivera?" Lucas stuttered, suddenly flustered in a way that was entirely endearing. "It doesn't have to be a date if you're not comfortable with that. We could just hang out, casually. As friends, or more than friends. If you want, no pressure. Will there be any bag grabbing involved?" Haley interrupted, unable to help herself. Lucas laughed, relaxing slightly. "I promise to keep my hands to myself, unless you want me to hold your bag for you." Tempting offer. Haley pretended to consider, even though her answer had been yes from the moment he'd asked. "Okay, fine. Yeah. Lucas's smile could have lit up the entire neighborhood. "Can I have your number? For planning purposes?" They exchanged numbers, fingers fumbling slightly in the cold, both of them grinning like idiots. "I should go inside before I turn into a popsicle," Haley said reluctantly. "Me too. But this was really great, Freeman. It was pretty okay, Rivera. Just okay? Don't push your luck." But Haley was smiling as she said it, and Lucas was smiling back. And when they finally parted ways, Lucas heading the 50 feet to his house, Haley slipping back through her door, they both kept looking back, catching each other's glances, neither wanting the night to end. Haley made it back to her room, changed out of her wet clothes, and was lying in bed still smiling when her phone buzzed. A text from Lucas. "Thanks for not murdering me for the snowball to the face," Haley typed back. "The night is still young." His response, "Sleep well, Freeman. You too, Rivera." Haley put her phone down, staring at her ceiling, her heart full of something she was almost afraid to name. This was happening. This was actually happening. And for the first time in a long time, Haley wasn't running away from it. The next evening, Lucas texted her an address and a time. 6 p.m. "What is this place?" Haley texted back. "It's a surprise. Trust me?" Haley stared at her phone, then typed, "Fine, but if you've lured me to a secondary location to murder me, I'm haunting you." Noted. At exactly 6 p.m., Haley pulled up to what appeared to be a sip and paint studio. She could see through the large front windows, people sitting at easels, wine glasses in hand, an instructor at the front. Lucas was waiting outside, looking unfairly good in a dark Henley and jeans, his hair slightly wind-tousled. "A paint place?" Haley asked, getting out of her car. "You took an artist to a sip and paint?" "I took an artist to a place where she can judge my terrible painting skills while drinking wine," Lucas corrected. "Big difference. This could go very badly for you. I'm counting on it." Inside, they were set up at adjoining easels with blank canvases, wine glasses, and an array of paints. The instructor, a perky woman named Jessica who was way too enthusiastic about sunflowers, explained that tonight's painting would be a sunset landscape, or, Lucas whispered to Haley, as Jessica demonstrated brush techniques, "we could ignore her and paint whatever we want." "Rebel," Haley whispered back, but she was already loading her brush with colors that had nothing to do with sunflowers. What followed was one of the most fun evenings Haley had experienced in recent memory. While everyone else obediently painted their sunset landscapes, Haley and Lucas went completely off script. Lucas attempted a portrait of Haley. It was terrible. The proportions were all wrong, the eyes were different sizes, and something about the smile made her look vaguely scary. "Is that supposed to be me?" Haley asked, trying not to laugh. "It's an artistic interpretation," It looks like a Picasso had a baby with a crime scene sketch. You're very mean to my art. I'm an art professional. It's literally my job to have opinions. Your professional opinion is that I'm terrible. My professional opinion is that you should stick to real estate. But Haley's painting wasn't much better. A comic-style portrait of Lucas that made him look like a superhero with an exaggerated jaw and cape made of paint splatters. "Why do I have a cape?" Lucas asked. "Because you think you're a hero for rescuing me from my allegedly suspicious airport behavior. That's actually pretty accurate." They were laughing so hard they were getting looks from the other painters, but neither of them cared. This was easy, fun, natural, no pressure, no expectations, just two people enjoying each other's company. After the class, they walked through the downtown area, snow crunching under their feet, Christmas lights still twinkling in store windows even though the holiday had passed. "Ice cream," Lucas suggested, pointing to a shop that was somehow still open despite the December cold. "It's like 20 degrees out." So yes, obviously. They got their ice cream. Haley chose salted caramel, Lucas got chocolate mint, and continued walking, talking about everything and nothing. Lucas told her about his most disastrous real estate deal, where a property inspection had revealed that the house was apparently built on top of an old well that no one had known about. Haley countered with the story of an art show where she'd accidentally hung one of her paintings upside down and didn't realize until someone asked about her bold artistic choice. They talked about their families, their dreams, their fears. Lucas admitted that he sometimes worried he was becoming too much like his work, losing himself in deals and developments. Haley confessed that she sometimes felt like that good, like eventually someone would realize she wasn't as talented as people thought. "That's ridiculous," Lucas said firmly. "I've seen your work. Your mom showed me some photos. You're incredibly talented. My mom is biased. I'm not. And I'm telling you, you're the real deal, Freeman." The way he said it, so certain and sincere, made Haley's throat tight. They ended up at a small park, sitting on a bench despite the cold, finishing their ice cream and watching their breath cloud in the air. "This was really nice," Haley said softly. "Thank you for asking me out. Thank you for saying yes. I was pretty nervous." "You? Nervous? The guy who confronted an alleged bag thief at the airport? That was different. That was righteous indignation. This matters more." Haley's heart did that fluttering thing again. "It matters to me too." They sat in comfortable silence, and Haley realized something. She wasn't thinking about red flags or escape routes, or ways to sabotage the evening. She was just happy, present, wanting this moment to last. "We should do this again," Lucas said. "Definitely." Over the next few days, they fell into an easy pattern. Sometimes they planned to meet up, ice skating. Haley fell 7 times. Lucas caught her every single time. Watching terrible Christmas movies at Lucas's house while his mom made hot chocolate. Visiting an art gallery where Haley gave Lucas a running commentary on every piece. Other times they just ran into each other. At the grocery store, while walking around the neighborhood, at the coffee shop downtown. And every accidental meeting turned into hours of conversation, of laughter, of this growing connection that felt both exciting and terrifying. They were falling for each other, deeply and completely, and everyone around them could see it, except maybe themselves. Or maybe they could see it. Maybe they were just afraid to name it, to make it real, to risk this perfect, fragile thing they were building. But it was there, undeniable and growing stronger every day. The way Lucas looked at Haley when she was explaining her art, like she was creating magic right in front of him. The way Haley laughed at Lucas's jokes, genuine and unguarded. The way they'd started unconsciously mirroring each other's movements, finishing each other's sentences, existing in that comfortable synchronicity that usually takes people months or years to develop. New Year's Eve was approaching, and both families had already decided to celebrate together, which meant Lucas and Haley would ring in the new year, side by side, surrounded by their scheming mothers and knowing families. Neither of them could wait. The days between Christmas and New Year's Eve blurred together in the most beautiful way, each one bleeding into the next like watercolors on canvas. Soft, vibrant, impossible to separate into distinct moments because they all felt equally precious. Haley had always loved this week between the holidays. As a child, it had been a magical pocket of time when school was out. Presents were still new and exciting, and the whole world seemed to be holding its breath, waiting for the fresh start that came with a new year. But this year, it felt different. This year, every moment seemed to shimmer with possibility, and she knew exactly why. Lucas Rivera had somehow become woven into the fabric of her days so seamlessly that she couldn't quite remember what they'd been like without him. It started casually enough, or at least that's what Haley told herself. 2 days after their first official date, Haley had been walking downtown, ostensibly browsing the post-Christmas sales, when she'd literally bumped into Lucas coming out of a coffee shop. "We have to stop meeting like this," Lucas had said, steadying her with a hand on her elbow, that crooked smile already in place. "People are going to think you're stalking me." "Please," Haley had scoffed, even as her heart did that annoying fluttering thing. "You wish I was stalking you." "I really do," he'd said, so sincerely that it had caught her off guard. They'd ended up walking together, sharing the coffee Lucas had just bought, because Haley had forgotten to get one for herself. The conversation had flowed as easily as ever. Debates about whether pineapple belonged on pizza. Haley said yes. Lucas said absolutely not. They agreed to disagree. Stories about disastrous family vacations. Discussions about their favorite books and movies. "You're telling me you've never read Pride and Prejudice?" Haley had asked, genuinely scandalized. "I've seen the movie. Keira Knightley version." "That doesn't count." "Why not?" "I got the general idea. Pride, prejudice, people eventually getting together despite being terrible to each other initially." Haley had stopped walking, staring at him. Are you making a comparison to us right now?" Lucas had looked entirely too pleased with himself. "I would never." "You absolutely are." "Okay, maybe a little, but you have to admit there are some parallels. You think you're Mr. Darcy?" Haley had been trying not to laugh. "I mean, I'm wealthy-ish, occasionally awkward, and I insulted you when we first met." "You didn't insult me. You accused me of being a criminal, which could be seen as a form of insult," Lucas had continued smoothly. "And now I'm desperately trying to make amends while you resist my considerable charm." "Your considerable charm?" "Very considerable. I've been told I'm quite charming." "By who? Your mother?" "She counts." They dissolved into laughter, and passers-by had smiled at them. This young couple so obviously caught up in each other that the rest of the world had faded into background noise. The ice skating happened almost by accident. Haley had mentioned, during one of their increasingly frequent text conversations, that she'd always loved ice skating as a kid, but hadn't been in years. Within an hour, Lucas had sent her a photo of 2 tickets to the outdoor rink downtown. "You bought tickets?" Haley had texted back. "I'm impulsive. It's a character flaw. I'm a terrible skater." "Even better. I'll get to show off. You're insufferable. See you at 3? Haley had shown up wearing her favorite winter coat, a vintage burgundy number she'd found at a thrift store and customized with hand-painted snowflakes on the shoulders. Lucas had been waiting by the entrance, and the look on his face when he'd seen her had made her stomach flip. "You look beautiful," he'd said, and he'd said it like it was the simplest, most obvious truth in the world. The skating had been exactly as disastrous as Haley had warned. She'd stepped onto the ice with confidence, taken 3 strides, and immediately lost her balance. Lucas had caught her before she could fall, his hand steady on her waist, his laugh warm against her ear. "Okay, so maybe terrible was an understatement," Haley had admitted, clinging to his arms. "It's fine. I've got you." And he had. Every single time. Haley had fallen 7 times in the first 20 minutes. 7 times, Lucas had been right there, catching her, steadying her, making jokes to distract her from her embarrassment. Other skaters had given them amused looks. This woman who could barely stay upright, and this man who was clearly enjoying every second of playing hero. "I think you're doing this on purpose now," Lucas had said after the 6th fall, pulling her back to her feet. "Doing what on purpose? Falling. So I'll catch you." "That's ridiculous. Why would I?" Haley had started to protest, but her skate had hit a rough patch, and she'd stumbled forward. Lucas had caught her, again, but this time she'd crashed into his chest, her hands fisting in his jacket to keep from taking them both down. They'd frozen like that, suddenly aware of how close they were, how his arms had wrapped around her, how she could feel his heartbeat through all the layers of winter clothing. "Hi," Lucas had said softly, looking down at her. "Hi," Haley had whispered back. They'd stayed like that for a long moment, the world skating past them in blurs of color and motion, until a group of teenagers had nearly crashed into them and broken the spell. But something had shifted in that moment. Some last wall of hesitation had crumbled, leaving them both more vulnerable and more certain than before. The movie marathons had become tradition almost immediately. It had started when Lucas had mentioned he'd never seen Love Actually, and Haley had declared this a crime against Christmas cinema. She'd shown up at his house the next evening with her laptop, a bag of popcorn, and a determination to educate him on the classics. They'd watched from Hilda's couch, a comfortable distance apart at first, but gradually migrating closer as the movie progressed, until Haley had been curled against Lucas's side like it was the most natural thing in the world, his arm around her shoulders, her head resting on his chest. "This is terrible," Lucas had whispered during one particularly cheesy scene. "It's a classic. It's predictable and unrealistic, and the timeline makes no sense. You have no soul. I have standards." But he'd been smiling when he said it, and his fingers had been playing with the ends of her curls, and Haley had felt so content she could have stayed there forever. They'd watched 4 Christmas movies over the course of a week, each one worse than the last, though they'd argued extensively about the ranking. Lucas had maintained that The Holiday was the worst offender. House swapping with a stranger? That's how you get murdered. While Haley had insisted serendipity took the crown, they're basing their entire relationship on gloves and a $5 bill. Hilda had walked in during one particularly heated debate and had just smiled knowingly, bringing them hot chocolate and cookies before disappearing back into the kitchen. Their mothers, Haley had realized, were being surprisingly subtle about their matchmaking scheme now that it was actually working. They'd backed off, giving Lucas and Haley space to figure things out on their own. Which was good, because Haley wasn't ready to acknowledge out loud what was happening. Wasn't ready to examine too closely the way her heart jumped every time her phone buzzed with a text from Lucas, or the way she found herself thinking about him at random moments throughout the day, or the way she'd started planning her outfits with a little more care, wondering if he'd like them. She was falling for him, had maybe already fallen, but saying it out loud felt too big, too scary, too much like inviting the universe to snatch it all away. The coffee dates were Lucas's favorite. There was something about the mundane intimacy of it, sitting across from Haley in a corner booth at the local cafe, watching her doctor. Her coffee with what he'd learned was exactly 2 sugars and a concerning amount of cream, listening to her talk about her latest art project or complain about a difficult client for her clothing business. He'd learned so much about her in these quiet moments, that she bit her lower lip when she was concentrating, that she talked with her hands, creating elaborate gestures to emphasize her points, that she had strong opinions about almost everything, from the best type of coffee beans to the superiority of autumn over spring, and would defend those opinions with a passion that made him want to disagree just to keep her talking. He'd learned that she was fiercely loyal to her family, even when they drove her crazy, that she'd once cried for 2 hours after accidentally stepping on a snail, that she kept every birthday card she'd ever received in a box under her bed because she couldn't bear to throw away people's handwritten messages. He'd learned that she was brilliant and talented, and so much more than the confident, witty woman she showed the world. There was softness beneath the sarcasm, vulnerability beneath the strength, and Lucas found himself wanting to know every layer, every secret, every hidden corner of her heart. "What?" Haley had asked one afternoon, catching him staring. "Nothing. Just, you're really something, Freeman." "That's not an answer. It's the only answer I've got." She'd blushed, ducking her head behind her coffee cup, but he'd seen the smile she couldn't quite hide. The walks in the snow became their excuse to extend every meeting, every date, every stolen moment together. "I should probably head home," one of them would say, and the other would respond, "I'll walk you," even though their houses were literally 50 feet apart and visible from each other's windows. They'd take the long way, looping through the neighborhood, their breath creating clouds in the cold air, their shoulders bumping companionably. Sometimes they'd talk about everything and nothing, the conversations flowing so naturally that hours could pass without them noticing. Other times they'd walk in comfortable silence, just enjoying each other's presence. Lucas had started taking Haley's hand during these walks. It had happened so gradually that he couldn't pinpoint the exact moment it had become normal. One day he'd been walking beside her, the next his fingers were laced through hers, her small hand warm in his larger one, even through their gloves. No one commented on it. It just was. During one of these walks, they'd encountered a group of kids building a snowman in their front yard. The kids had recognized Haley. Apparently her stint as Santa at Phoebe's birthday had made her famous in the neighborhood, and had begged for help. Lucas had watched Haley drop to her knees in the snow without hesitation, helping the children roll the middle section of the snowman, her laughter bright and genuine as one of the kids accidentally threw snow in her face. She'd retaliated with gentle precision, sparking a mini snowball fight that had left everyone pink-cheeked and breathless with joy. "You're really good with kids," Lucas had said later, after they'd finally extracted themselves and continued their walk. "Kids are easy. They're honest, they're imaginative, and they think I'm cool. It's a winning combination. Do you want them? Kids, I mean, someday?" It was perhaps too serious a question for where they were in their relationship, if they were even officially in a relationship, which neither of them had explicitly defined. But Haley had considered it thoughtfully, not shying away from the weight of it. "Yeah," she'd said finally. "Yeah, I think I do. Not yet. I've got work I want to do first, places I want to see. But someday, 2, maybe 3. Enough that they're not lonely, not so many that I lose my mind." She'd glanced at him, suddenly vulnerable. Is that weird to talk about?" "No," Lucas had said, and he'd meant it. "It's perfect." What he hadn't said, what he'd barely let himself think, was how easily he could imagine it. Haley, round with pregnancy, painting in a sun-filled studio, children with her wild curls and his blue eyes, a life built together, brick by brick, moment by moment. It was too soon for those thoughts. Way too soon. But they'd taken root in his heart anyway, stubborn and persistent and impossible to ignore. Both families watched the developing romance with varying degrees of subtlety. Mirabel and Hilda had taken to having coffee together every morning, ostensibly to catch up as old friends, but really to exchange updates on the kids. They went ice skating yesterday, Hilda would report with barely contained glee. I know. Haley came home with her coat soaking wet and the most ridiculous smile on her face. Mirabel would respond. Did Lucas say anything? Only that he'd never met anyone who could fall that many times and still keep getting back up. He was absolutely smitten when he said it. They'd giggle like schoolgirls, already planning the wedding in their heads, though they were both wise enough not to push. This was working precisely because they'd stepped back and let nature take its course. Charlotte and Daisy had their own running commentary, which they shared via text message in a group chat they'd titled Haley's Rom-Com Life. Charlotte texted to the group, "Just saw Lucas leaving our house." Haley was smiling at her phone for 20 minutes afterward. "This is disgusting," Daisy replied. "Disgusting in a cute way, though?" "The cutest. I hate how much I love this for her. Think they'll be engaged by Valentine's Day? Bold prediction. I'm saying March. Loser has to babysit for a full weekend. Deal." As New Year's Eve approached, the anticipation built like a physical thing, electric and inevitable. Both families had decided to celebrate together at the Grandview Hotel, a fancy downtown establishment with an old-world elegance and a rooftop terrace that was legendary for its New Year's Eve parties. They'd reserved a private section with the best view of the fireworks display that the city put on every year. Haley and Lucas had been texting about it constantly. "What are you wearing to the party?" Lucas had texted. "Why, Rivera? Planning to coordinate?" Haley responded. "Maybe. Or maybe, I just want to be prepared for how good you're going to look. Smooth. I'm wearing a dress. It's blue. That's all you're getting." The day of New Year's Eve arrived with clear, cold weather, perfect for fireworks viewing. Haley spent an embarrassing amount of time getting ready, settling on the blue dress she'd mentioned to Lucas. It was a deep navy that made her brown skin glow, fitted through the waist before flowing to just above her knees. Elegant, but not overly formal. "You look beautiful, sweetheart," Mirabel had said, appearing in Haley's doorway. "Thanks, Mom." Haley had checked her reflection one more time, smoothing non-existent wrinkles. "He's not going to be able to take his eyes off you, Mom." "I'm just saying." Mirabel had smiled, that knowing mother smile that was simultaneously annoying and comforting. "I'm happy for you, Haley. Really happy. Lucas is a good man." "I know," Haley had said softly. "I really like him, Mom. Like, really, really like him. I can tell. And he feels the same way. Anyone with eyes can see it." Mirabel had crossed the room to hug her daughter. "Just let yourself be happy, okay? I know you've been hurt before, and I know you're scared of things not being perfect. But sometimes perfect isn't what you imagined. Sometimes it's messy and unexpected." Both families had arrived at the Grandview Hotel together, a caravan of cars pulling up to the elegant entrance. The hotel was everything its reputation promised. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, impeccably dressed staff guiding guests toward the elevators. Lucas had been waiting in the lobby, and when he'd seen Haley step through the doors in that blue dress, everything else had faded. She was stunning. Absolutely, devastatingly stunning, and the smile she'd given him when their eyes met had nearly stopped his heart. "Hi," she'd said, walking over to him while her family headed toward the elevators. "Hi, you look." Lucas had seemed to lose the ability to form complete sentences. "That dress is. You're beautiful. You clean up pretty well yourself, Rivera." He'd been wearing a dark suit with a crisp white shirt. No tie, perfectly balanced between formal and approachable. Haley had wanted to run her hands through his carefully styled hair and mess it up, but they were in public and surrounded by family, so she'd settled for stepping a little closer than was strictly necessary. "Shall we?" Lucas had offered his arm, and Haley had taken it, both of them grinning like idiots. The elevator ride up had been crowded and chaotic, Gerald and Phoebe chattering excitedly about staying up until midnight, Charlotte trying to remind them about inside voices, Daisy looking slightly queasy from the rapid ascent, Marcus hovering protectively. Franklin and James had been discussing sports, while Mirabelle and Hilda had been pretending not to watch Lucas and Haley with undisguised delight. The rooftop terrace was spectacular. String lights crisscrossed overhead, creating a canopy of stars. Heat lamps were strategically placed to combat the winter cold. Their private section had comfortable seating, tables laden with appetizers and champagne, and an unobstructed view of the city skyline. The party atmosphere was building. Other guests were already celebrating. Music was playing. Laughter echoed across the rooftop. It was magical, festive, perfect. Haley and Lucas had gravitated to the edge of the terrace, looking out over the city lights, standing close enough that their shoulders touched. "This is nice," Haley had said. "It really is. I'm glad you're here." Lucas had turned to look at her, something soft and serious in his expression. "Haley, but whatever he'd been about to say was interrupted by Mirabelle's voice calling out, "Oh no, 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 no." They'd both turned to see Mirabelle frantically searching through her purse, her expression increasingly distressed. "What's wrong, Mom?" Charlotte had asked. "My camera, my good camera. I left it in the car." Mirabelle had looked genuinely upset. "I wanted to take proper family photos at midnight, and I left it in the car like an idiot." "It's okay, Mom," Haley had tried to soothe. "We can use our phones. It's not the same. The resolution, the quality." Mirabelle had been spiraling in that way she did when plans went awry. "I'll go get it," Franklin had started to say, but Haley had stopped him. "No, Dad, stay here. I'll get it. It'll take me 5 minutes." She turned to her mother. "Which car and where exactly did you leave it?" Mirabelle had described the location in exhaustive detail, handing over the car keys with visible relief. "Thank you, sweetie. You're a lifesaver." "I'll come with you," Lucas had said immediately, already moving toward Haley. "That parking garage is huge and poorly lit, plus 2 sets of eyes to find the camera faster." Haley had wanted to argue. She was perfectly capable of retrieving a camera on her own, but the truth was, she'd wanted him to come. Wanted any excuse to have a few minutes alone with him, away from the knowing looks and barely concealed smiles of their families. "Okay," she'd agreed. "Let's go." As they'd headed toward the elevators, Haley had caught Charlotte's eye. Her sister had given her a thumbs up and a grin that clearly said, "Have fun being conveniently alone together." Haley had rolled her eyes but couldn't help smiling. The universe, it seemed, had plans for them tonight, and neither Haley nor Lucas had any idea just how perfect and how perfectly timed those plans would be. The elevator ride down was filled with their usual easy banter. Haley teased Lucas about being overprotective. "I can handle a parking garage, Rivera. I've navigated New York subway stations at 2 a.m. And Lucas countered with reminders of her tendency to attract chaos, says the woman who once wrestled a raccoon for her luggage. "That was one time." Once is enough to establish a pattern of poor decision-making in wildlife encounters. "You're impossible. You like it." And God help her, she did. She really, really did. The parking garage was indeed massive, a concrete maze that seemed to stretch on forever, filled with rows upon rows of vehicles. They found the Freeman's Volvo on the 3rd level, and sure enough, Mirabelle's blue camera bag was sitting exactly where she'd described. "Got it," Haley announced triumphantly, checking inside to make sure it was the right camera and that the battery was still charged. See? Simple. I didn't even need a bodyguard. Where's the fun in that? They made their way back to the elevators, Haley still fiddling with the camera to ensure everything was in working order. The elevator that arrived was empty, a twin to the one they'd ridden up in, all brass and mirrors and vintage elegance. Lucas pressed the button for the 32nd floor, and the doors slid closed with a soft whoosh. The elevator began its ascent with that familiar, gentle hum. Haley was checking the camera's photo gallery, making sure the memory card had enough space, when she felt the elevator lurch slightly. She looked up, meeting Lucas's eyes in one of the mirrored walls. "Did you feel—" She never finished the sentence. There was a grinding sound, metal on metal, wrong and grating, and the lights flickered once, twice. The elevator jerked violently, and then stopped with a shudder that sent Haley stumbling forward. Lucas caught her instantly, his hands steady on her arms, pulling her against him to keep her upright. What the hell? The regular lighting had gone out, replaced by the eerie, dim glow of emergency lights that cast everything in strange shadows. Haley's heart was pounding, adrenaline flooding her system. Are we stuck?" Her voice came out smaller than she'd intended. Lucas was already moving to the control panel, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to the panic starting to bubble in Haley's chest. He pressed the button for the 32nd floor. Nothing happened. He tried the door open button. Still nothing. Finally, he pressed the red emergency call button. There was a crackling sound, then a male voice filled the small space. "Hello, this is building security. We're aware of the elevator malfunction. We're experiencing a building-wide electrical issue due to the surge from all the New Year's celebrations in the area. Maintenance is on their way, but it might take a while. We have multiple elevators down, and they're prioritizing ones with elderly passengers and children first. Are either of you injured or in medical distress?" "No, we're fine," Lucas responded, though he glanced at Haley to confirm. She shook her head, still clutching the camera bag like a lifeline. "Good. Sit tight. We'll get you out as soon as possible. Could be 30 minutes, could be a couple hours. There's no danger. You have air circulation and emergency power. Just try to stay calm." The intercom clicked off, leaving them in silence, broken only by the faint hum of the emergency system. Haley pulled out her phone, the screen's glow harsh in the dim lighting. 10:53 p.m. Her eyes widened. "We're going to miss midnight." Lucas checked his own phone, and she watched his expression shift, disappointment flickering across his features before he schooled it into something calmer. "Yeah, looks like it." The reality settled over them. Missing midnight on New Year's Eve. Missing the fireworks. Missing the champagne toast and the countdown and the moment when the whole world seemed to hold its breath before stepping into a new beginning. "I should call Charlotte," Haley said, already pulling up her sister's number. "Let them know we're okay so they don't worry." Charlotte answered on the second ring, the sounds of the party in full swing behind her. "Hey, did you find the camera?" "Yeah, we found it. But—" Haley took a breath. "We're stuck in the elevator. The power's out, building wide apparently. We're fine, not hurt or anything, but they said it could be a while before they get us out." There was a pause. Then Charlotte's voice came back with barely concealed amusement. "You're stuck in an elevator, with Lucas, on New Year's Eve. Charlotte, look at it this way. You two get some alone time." Her sister was definitely grinning. "I'll tell Mom and Dad. Just sit tight. Try to enjoy yourselves." "We're trapped in a metal box," Haley protested. "A romantic metal box. It's like a movie. I'm hanging up now. Use protection." Charlotte managed to get out before Haley ended the call, her face burning. Lucas was trying very hard not to laugh. "Use protection? My sister is a menace. She's not wrong though." "About what?" This is kind of like a movie." At Haley's glare, he held up his hands in surrender. "I'm just saying." Meet cute at an airport, matchmaking mothers, stuck in an elevator on New Year's Eve. It's basically a rom-com plot. Our meet cute involved you accusing me of theft and my vibrator rolling across a public space. See? Even better. That's the kind of detail that makes it memorable. Despite everything, the stuck elevator, the missed midnight countdown looming, the emergency lighting casting weird shadows, Haley felt laughter bubble up, because of course this would happen to them. Of course their romance would be full of chaos and mishaps, and moments that seemed designed to test whether they could find humor in disaster. "Well," Lucas said finally, sliding down to sit on the floor with his back against the mirrored wall. "At least we're not stuck with strangers." "Right," Haley agreed, lowering herself to sit across from him, her back against the opposite wall. Their legs stretched out in the narrow space, their feet almost touching in the middle. "Instead, I'm stuck with the guy who thinks I'm a professional bag thief. I thought you were going to let that go." "Never." But she was smiling when she said it, and Lucas was smiling back, and somehow the emergency lighting made his blue eyes even more striking. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their situation settling around them. Then Lucas's expression shifted, something mischievous creeping into his smile. "You know, your mom is going to be absolutely thrilled about this when we tell her." Haley groaned, dropping her head back against the wall. "Oh God, you're right. She's probably up there right now telling everyone that fate intervened to give us quality time together. My mom too. They're probably already planning what to wear to our wedding. We've been on like 3 official dates. 4, if you count the sip and paint. That was more like a hangout." "Still counts." Lucas's smile softened. "Though for the record, I'd count every moment we've spent together, even the airport disaster, especially the snowball fight." Haley felt her heart do that fluttering thing again. "You're being sappy, Rivera. Stuck in an elevator on New Year's Eve. If there was ever a time for sappy, this is it." A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only when Haley's eyes landed on the camera bag, still sitting where she'd set it down when they first got stuck. "Hey," she said, struck by sudden inspiration. "Want to see something embarrassing?" Lucas sat up straighter, immediately interested. "Always." Haley retrieved the camera and turned it on, navigating to the photo gallery. "My mom's had this camera for years. She never deletes anything." She settled back against the wall, and Lucas shifted so he was sitting next to her, close enough that their shoulders touched, both of them looking at the camera's small screen. The most recent photos were from earlier that evening. The family getting ready, everyone dressed in their New Year's finest, Gerald and Phoebe being adorably excited. But as Haley scrolled backward, the images became a trip through time. Christmas morning, just days ago, the whole family in their pajamas, wrapping paper everywhere. Lucas in the background looking at Haley with an expression that made her breath catch even in photographic form. "You can see it here," Lucas said softly, pointing at the image. "The exact moment I realized I was in trouble." "What do you mean? Look at how I'm looking at you. I'm completely gone." Haley studied the photo, her heart swelling. "Keep scrolling," she said, her voice a little thick. They moved further back. Daisy's wedding, just a few months ago. Haley in a bridesmaid dress, laughing at something someone said, her head thrown back in pure joy. "You looked beautiful," Lucas murmured. "I'd just tripped coming down the aisle." This was right after. Still beautiful. Charlotte's wedding, years earlier. Haley looked so young, probably early 20s, standing with her sisters in matching lavender dresses. Then they reached the college years. Photos of Haley visiting home during breaks, her style evolving from teenage to young adult, her confidence growing with each passing year. There was one of her showing off her first major art piece, paint smudged on her cheek, grinning at the camera with pride. "Tell me about this one," Lucas said. "That was my senior thesis project. Took me 3 months, and I barely slept for the last 2 weeks before it was due. My mom drove up to school to see the exhibition, took me out to dinner after, told me she'd never been more proud. She has good reason to be proud." They kept scrolling. High school prom. Haley in a dress she'd clearly customized herself, unique and beautiful and so very her. High school plays and art shows and family dinners. Birthday parties where she'd made ridiculous faces at the camera instead of smiling normally. "Oh God, no, don't look at that one." Haley tried to skip past a particularly awkward middle school photo, but Lucas stopped her. "Are those braces with purple bands? It was a phase. And your hair." I know. It was a disaster. I tried to straighten it myself and ended up with this weird half-straight, half-curly situation. You were adorable." "I was a mess. An adorable mess." Lucas was grinning now, clearly delighted. "Please tell me there are more awkward phase photos." There were. Many more. Haley cringed through them while Lucas laughed, genuinely, warmly, with no meanness in it, just pure enjoyment of seeing the journey that had led to the woman sitting beside him. Then they reached the childhood photos. Haley's first painting, held up proudly at age 6, more paint on her than on the canvas. Family trips to the beach where she was building sandcastles with Charlotte and baby Daisy. Christmases past. Birthday parties. Ordinary moments captured and preserved by a mother who'd wanted to remember every second. "You've been beautiful your whole life," Lucas said quietly, and something in his tone made Haley look up from the camera screen. "Stop," she said, but it came out softer than she'd intended. "I'm serious." He turned to face her fully, and in the dim emergency lighting, his expression was open and honest in a way that made Haley's heart race. "Not just physically, though you absolutely are gorgeous, but the way you laugh in every single one of these photos, the way you make faces instead of smiling normally because you can't help being yourself, the way your whole face lights up when you're talking about something you love. You've been that person your whole life, haven't you? This vibrant, creative, passionate person who makes everything more interesting just by being in the room." Haley couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only stare at him as he continued. "That first day at the airport, even though I made a complete fool of myself, and you had every reason to hate me, you still looked at me like I was worth engaging with, worth arguing with. And then at Phoebe's birthday, dressed as Santa, you could have just ignored me, but you gave me a chance. And every day since then, you've been letting me see more of you. And Haley," he paused, seeming to gather courage, "you're the most beautiful person I've ever met, inside and out. And I'm completely, utterly, hopelessly smitten with you." Her hands were shaking. The camera was still in her lap, still displaying some photo from her childhood, but she couldn't look away from Lucas's face. "This has been one of my best Christmases," he continued. "Maybe the best. Because of you. Because somewhere between the airport disaster and the snowball fight and the terrible Christmas movies, I fell for you. Hard. And I know it's fast. And I know it's probably too soon to say this, but we're stuck in an elevator on New Year's Eve, and if there was ever a time to be honest, Lucas," his name came out as barely a whisper. "Yeah? I've fallen for you too." She watched his expression transform, surprise melting into joy, melting into something so tender it made her chest ache. "Yeah? Yeah. I tried not to, honestly. Tried to keep it casual, keep my distance, protect myself. But she struggled to find the words. "You're kind and funny, and you catch me every time I fall, literally and figuratively. You get along with my family, and you're good with kids, and you don't think it's weird that I'd rather watch paint dry than go to a club. You see me, really see me, and you still want to be here, There's nowhere else I'd rather be, even stuck in an elevator. Even stuck in an elevator, she agreed, smiling despite the tears threatening to form. They sat there for a moment, just looking at each other, the camera forgotten in Haley's lap. Then, from somewhere above or below them, it was hard to tell in the confined space, they heard it. Voices, distant but unmistakable, beginning the countdown. 10, 9, 8. Haley's eyes widened. Is that 7, 6, 5? The countdown, Lucas finished. They were going to miss midnight on the rooftop, miss the champagne and the fireworks, and the celebration with their families. 4, 3, 2, but they weren't missing it entirely. 1. Happy New Year. The sound of cheering and noisemakers and celebration echoed faintly through the elevator shaft, a reminder of the world continuing around them. And in their small, dimly lit space, Lucas reached up to cup Haley's face, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone. "Can I kiss you?" he asked softly. "Is that okay?" In answer, Haley closed the distance between them. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, both of them aware that they were crossing a line from which there was no going back. But then, Haley's hands found their way into Lucas's hair, and his arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her closer, and tentative became certain, became inevitable. He kissed her like he'd been waiting his whole life for this moment, like she was precious and important and worth the wait. His lips moved against hers with a gentleness that made her heart ache, and a passion that made her head spin. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing heavily, Haley was somehow in Lucas's lap, his arms still around her, her forehead resting against his. "Happy New Year, Freeman," he whispered. "Happy New Year, Rivera." They might have stayed like that forever, wrapped in each other in the dim lighting, if not for the sudden whir of machinery coming back to life. The regular lights flickered on, bright and jarring after the emergency lighting. The elevator gave a small lurch, and then began moving upward with its familiar smooth hum. "Oh," Haley scrambled off Lucas's lap, suddenly aware of how disheveled they must look. Lucas stood too, running a hand through his hair in an attempt to smooth it down, both of them grinning at each other like teenagers caught making out. "Your lipstick is," Lucas gestured at his own mouth. "Your hair is," Haley mirrored the gesture. They spent the remaining seconds of the elevator ride frantically trying to make themselves presentable, dissolving into laughter every time they caught each other's eyes. By the time the doors opened onto the 32nd floor, they looked relatively put together, though Lucas's hair still stuck up at odd angles, and Haley's lipstick was definitely smudged. The rooftop terrace erupted in cheers when they stepped out, not for them specifically, but for the fireworks that had just begun, painting the night sky in brilliant colors. Charlotte saw them first and came rushing over. "You're okay. We were starting to worry. Oh my God." She stopped short, taking in their slightly disheveled appearance and matching guilty expressions. "You kissed. You totally kissed." "Charlotte," Haley started, but her sister was already calling to the rest of the family. They kissed. Haley and Lucas kissed. Suddenly, they were surrounded by their families. Mirabelle looking delighted, Hilda beaming, Franklin trying to maintain a stern father expression but clearly pleased. "I knew it," Mirabelle crowed. "I knew that elevator would be perfect for—" "Mom, did you plan this?" Haley asked suspiciously. "Plan a building-wide electrical malfunction? Of course not, sweetie. But I may have had a feeling things would work out." She winked at Hilda, who smiled back innocently. Lucas caught Haley's hand, lacing their fingers together, no longer caring who saw. "Come on," he said, pulling her toward the edge of the terrace. "We're missing the fireworks." They found a spot at the railing, his arms wrapping around her from behind, her back against his chest, both of them looking up at the sky as it exploded in color. The city spread out before them, a million lights twinkling like earthbound stars, and somewhere in all those buildings were other people, falling in love, celebrating new beginnings, hoping for better tomorrows. "This is perfect," Haley whispered, leaning back against Lucas's solid warmth. "It really is," he agreed, pressing a kiss to her temple. Behind them, their families had gathered to watch the fireworks too, but Mirabelle had managed to retrieve her camera from where Haley had set it down, and she was absolutely taking pictures of Haley and Lucas, silhouetted against the fireworks, wrapped in each other like they'd found their home. Later, when Haley would see those photos, she'd understand why her mother never deleted anything. Because these moments, the big ones and the small ones, the planned and the unexpected, the disasters that turned into blessings, these were the moments worth preserving. These were the moments that became the story of a life. And what a story it was turning out to be. The airport was chaos, but this time, Haley barely noticed. She was too busy laughing at something Lucas had just said, her hand firmly clasped in his as they made their way through the terminal. It had been 3 days since New Year's Eve, 3 days since that kiss in the elevator, and they'd spent nearly every waking moment together. Their families had finally returned to their respective homes. Charlotte and her family back to their life, Daisy and Marcus to their apartment, Mirabelle and Franklin settling back into their routine, with knowing smiles every time they looked at Haley. Now, Haley and Lucas were traveling back together. Lucas had gotten a new travel bag. Black this time. He'd learned his lesson about bright colors, and they'd deliberately chosen seats next to each other on the plane. The flight was easy, filled with conversation and comfortable silences, shared headphones and stolen kisses when they thought the flight attendants weren't looking. They talked about everything and nothing, their plans for the coming weeks, places they wanted to visit together, movies they needed to watch, foods they needed to try. When they landed, there was an awkward moment at baggage claim where they both just stood there, neither quite ready to separate and go back to their individual lives. "So," Lucas said finally, his hand still holding hers, "when can I see you again?" Haley pretended to think about it. "I don't know. I'm pretty busy. I have to check my schedule." He pulled her closer, that crooked smile in place. "Haley, maybe tomorrow? If you're free?" "I'm free. I'm very, very free." They kissed right there in the baggage claim, and if a few people gave them knowing smiles or eye rolls at the couple clearly too wrapped up in each other to care about social norms, well, that was fine. They'd started their story in an airport. It seemed fitting to have these moments here too. Eventually, reluctantly, they had to part ways. Lucas to his apartment across town, Haley to hers. But they texted before they'd even left the airport parking lot. "Miss you already," Lucas had texted. "You saw me 5 minutes ago," Haley had replied. "5 minutes too long. You're ridiculous." The next 3 months passed in a blur of happiness. They saw each other as often as possible. Dinners and movies and long walks and lazy Sundays spent in one of their apartments, just being together. They met each other's friends, integrated into each other's lives with an ease that felt inevitable. Haley brought Lucas to one of her art exhibitions, and he'd stood in front of her pieces with genuine awe, asking her about her process and her inspiration, making her fall for him a little more with every thoughtful question. Lucas brought Haley to a property he was developing, and she'd walked through the empty spaces, imagining the lives that would unfold there, contributing ideas about the design that he'd actually taken seriously and incorporated. They had their first fight about something stupid, whether to get pizza or Chinese food, and made up within 20 minutes because neither of them could stand being at odds with the other. They celebrated Valentine's Day with a homemade dinner that Lucas attempted to cook and Haley had to help rescue, both of them ending up ordering takeout anyway and eating it on his living room floor while watching terrible rom-coms and pointing out all the ways their own story was better. They talked about the future in hypotheticals that gradually became less hypothetical, where they might want to live, how many kids they wanted. They'd both agreed on 2 or 3. What kind of wedding they'd want if they ever got married, small and intimate, focused on family. And through it all, they texted constantly. Just saw a raccoon. Thought of you, Haley had texted. That's so romantic. Really feeling the love, Lucas replied. I didn't wrestle it this time. That's growth. I'm proud of you. Are you proud enough to come over and help me move my couch? I'm rearranging my studio. On my way. He was always on his way. Whenever she needed him, whenever she called, he showed up. And she did the same for him, bringing him dinner when he was working late, helping him prepare for presentations, being the person he called when he had good news or bad news, or just needed to hear a friendly voice. Their mothers kept in close contact, obviously, texting each other updates and photos, already planning holidays together. At one point, Charlotte had sent Haley a screenshot of their family group chat where Mirabel had shared a photo of Lucas and Haley from Valentine's Day with the caption, "Future son-in-law looking very handsome." Mom is insane, but also not wrong. It's only been 2 months. 2 months, 6 months, 2 years. When you know, you know. And sis, you know. Haley had stared at that message for a long time before responding. Yeah, I really do. The proposal came 3 months to the day after their first kiss in the elevator. Lucas had planned it carefully, or so he thought. He'd made reservations at a fancy restaurant, bought the ring, rehearsed what he wanted to say, but then Haley had shown up at his door unexpectedly that afternoon, covered in paint and breathless with excitement about a new commission she'd just landed, and he'd looked at her, really looked at her, standing in his doorway, talking a mile a minute with paint in her hair, and joy radiating from every pore. And he'd thought, this is the moment. Marry me, he'd said, interrupting her mid-sentence. Haley had stopped talking, her eyes going wide. What? Marry me, he'd repeated, and then he'd fumbled for the ring box in his jacket pocket, nearly dropping it in his haste. I had a whole plan. I was going to take you to dinner and make it romantic and perfect, but you're standing here covered in paint, talking about your art, and you're so beautiful, and so you and I can't wait. I don't want to wait. Haley Freeman, will you marry me? She'd stared at him for a long moment, her mouth slightly open, and Lucas's heart had started to sink because, oh God, he'd miscalculated. It was too soon. He'd ruined everything. Yes, she'd said. Yes, yes, yes. He'd barely gotten the ring on her finger before she'd launched herself at him, kissing him with such enthusiasm that they'd tumbled backward onto his couch, both of them laughing and crying and holding each other like they'd never let go. Later, when they'd called their families to share the news, Mirabel and Hilda had both claimed they'd known all along. Charlotte had won her bet with Daisy about the timeline they'd gotten engaged, just a week before Charlotte's predicted date. Franklin had asked to speak to Lucas privately and had given him a gruff but sincere speech about taking care of his daughter that had ended with, "Welcome to the family, son." The wedding itself happened 4 months later, small and intimate, just like they'd discussed. In the garden of a small destination villa, which Haley had always thought was beautiful, with string lights overhead and flowers everywhere, and all the people they loved gathered close. Charlotte and Daisy were Haley's bridesmaids, with Phoebe as flower girl and Gerald as ring bearer. Lucas's best friend from college stood as his best man. Hilda cried through the entire ceremony. So did Mirabel. So did Franklin, though he'd deny it later. Haley wore a dress she'd customized herself, of course, ivory with hand-painted flowers on the hem, unique and beautiful, and perfectly her. Lucas wore a suit, and couldn't take his eyes off her from the moment she appeared at the end of the makeshift aisle. They'd written their own vows. Haley had made everyone laugh and cry by referencing the bag-grabbing incident that started it all, promising to only wrestle raccoons when absolutely necessary, and to always let you catch me when I fall. Lucas had promised to love every chaotic, creative, beautiful moment with you, and to never again mistake you for a criminal, though I make no promises about thinking you've stolen my heart. When they kissed as husband and wife, their families cheered. It was perfect. The reception was in the villa's hall. Tables spread with food, music playing, everyone dancing and celebrating. At one point, Lucas had pulled Haley close for a slow dance, even though the music wasn't slow, just wanting to hold her, to have this moment. They danced under the string lights as the sun set and the stars came out, surrounded by the people who'd brought them together and the love they'd built despite every obstacle and awkward moment. Later, much later, when the party was winding down and they were preparing to leave for their honeymoon, Mirabelle had pulled Haley aside. "I have something for you," she'd said, pressing her camera into Haley's hands, the same camera they'd looked through in the elevator. "I made you a photo album of your journey, from when you came for Christmas, everything in between." Haley had flipped through it, tears streaming down her face, seeing her story laid out in images. The awkward first meeting at Phoebe's birthday, the Christmas celebration, the New Year's Eve party, the proposal, the wedding preparations, and finally tonight. The last photo was one someone had taken just moments ago. Haley and Lucas dancing, her head on his shoulder, his arms around her. Both of them smiling like nothing else in the world mattered but each other. "Mom," Haley had whispered, "it's perfect." "No, sweetie," Mirabelle had replied, kissing her daughter's forehead. "You're perfect, and you found someone perfect for you. That's all I ever wanted." Now, as they left the reception, Haley looked over at her husband, and felt joy so complete, it was almost overwhelming. "What are you thinking about?" Lucas asked, catching her looking. "Just that if you'd told me a few months ago that the guy who made my vibrator roll across an airport terminal would become the love of my life, I never would have believed you." Lucas laughed, that warm, genuine laugh she'd fallen in love with. "Life's funny that way. Life's perfect that way," Haley corrected, reaching over to take his hand. And as they made their way to their honeymoon suite, toward lazy Sunday mornings and passionate arguments about pizza toppings, toward supporting each other's dreams and building a home, and maybe someday kids who'd be just as chaotic as their mother and just as charming as their father. Haley thought about all the moments that had led them here. The airport disaster that had started it all, the Santa suit introduction, the grocery store run-in, Christmas dinner, where their families had seen what they were both too stubborn to admit, the ice skating where he'd caught her 7 times, the terrible movies and easy laughter, the elevator kiss at midnight. Every awkward, beautiful, perfectly imperfect moment had been leading them here, to this happiness, to this life they'd build together. Sometimes, Haley thought, love doesn't look like what you expect. Sometimes it doesn't follow the rules of the romance novels or match the fantasies you'd built in your head. Sometimes it starts with chaos and embarrassment and a pink vibrator rolling across an airport floor, but that doesn't make it any less real, any less powerful, any less worth fighting for. Sometimes, the best love stories are the ones that make you laugh at your own absurdity, that remind you not to take life too seriously, that teach you to find joy in disaster and meaning in mayhem.